What's up, YouTube friends? Back again. We're going to take it back. This is a video from 1968. What white America thinks of black America. Should be interesting. I'm curious what some of the comments are, what parallels I can draw. Are the opinions valid or not? It seems very interesting, especially with how crazy race relations have gotten in the past years. So let's get right into it.
CBS News presents Of Black America, the final broadcast in its 7-part series, Portraits in Black and White.
Good evening. Tonight, CBS News takes a deep breath and plunges into a pool of statistics. Someone once said that sooner or later, all words decay into imprecision. So do pictures. No one who's had a television set in America needs a primer on race relations. And by now, both words and pictures seem worn out. For this reason, and with the hope that scientific discipline might be of use, CBS News commissioned a poll which attempted to measure racial attitudes in the United States statistically.
We begin with white attitudes that underline the racial problem. The white of today is being asked to answer for history. This Midwestern housewife, like a lot of white Americans, does not think the Negro should present history's bill to her.
We hear so much about the slavery. 300 years ago, our grandfathers were slaves, or 200 years ago, our grandfathers were slaves. Well, for God's sakes, did we have anything to do with that? I had no part in it. I had no slaves. My folks didn't. My grandparents didn't. Are they blaming us for what happened 3 years ago? Let's forget the past. Think of the future. Build up the future. And why keep hemming and hawing over the same thing over and over and over again? And they say, you must give me land because my grandfather was a slave. Well, then I would say, for God's sakes, find the man who had your grandfather as a slave and then demand the land from him. Don't bother me because I had no part of it.
Few people would be willing to make amends for...
That's fascinating. I mean, she raises some points that are understandable, right? It's like if you didn't have anything to do with it, you shouldn't be punished for something you had nothing to do with. But I mean, this is in 1968. Like, you just need to look outside your door, and I would imagine you'd see some form of discrimination taking place. I'm gonna just go out on a limb and say things weren't the best in terms of opportunities. I'm not going to make any judgment about her opinion, which, you know, on one end, she's correct. You know, you can't blame someone for something they had nothing to do. But on another end, it's like, you got to understand, like, you have to give credence to the fact that it wasn't just slavery.
For the actions of ancestors they never knew, for evils committed long before their time. So our survey is about people who are here today. Across the country, we asked whites whether the main reason Negroes had not made more progress was because of racial discrimination or because Negroes have not worked hard enough. This lawyer expressed a view we heard most often.
We find there is a reluctance upon the part of too many Negroes, particularly among the young, to take the hard and remunerative jobs that must be necessary to earn a living. There is a feeling that for some reason somebody owes them a living.
Just about half of whites in our survey said the Negro has not made more progress because he has not worked hard enough. Only 15% blames discrimination. Some had no opinion.
I feel that they're basically lazy.
No, ma'am. No, you're very mistaken. You're very mistaken.
When this summer, for example, opportunity was given to them to better themselves in getting as many jobs as possible in various fields of retail, wholesale, and they don't take the full advantage of accepting the responsibility of going out for these jobs. They feel that they're not good enough for them.
About half of whites agreed with this woman, that Negroes tend to be lazy more...
I'm so confused by this. I'm so confused by this because on one end, I'm like, is it real? Is this real? Like, what are they basing this stuff? Aren't you discriminating against them? They're discriminating against black people in that era. Am I wrong? Am I off base here? Do these people not agree that it was happening? I would say at that time, most of these people answering the questions have no real experience interacting or hanging out with black people. Man, it's so interesting to see the mentality because it's like, it's so unfair, man. And I'm one that believes in accountability, like full stop. But this is so unfair what these people are doing, man. This mentality is so ridiculous. They have all these opinions that aren't really based on anything solid. Like I'm sure if you ask this woman some follow-up questions like, okay, how many black people do you know? How many of them have you hung out with? Do you agree that there's discrimination in the society? What this does do is it gives me a lot of context as to why certain people can have certain opinions that they have. You're literally depriving people of opportunities and then calling them lazy.
More than whites. And this woman mentioned another charge against Negroes, that they have low morals.
Their sex problem, let's face it now, how many white people have 10 illegitimate children? Very few, very few. This seems to be a trend with them. And I often wondered, what happens to these here men who follow these children? Are they busy making babies elsewhere, or are they busy in the civil rights march yelling for the civil rights?
And 4 out of 10 whites in our survey agreed that Negroes, more than whites, have low moral standards. However, half or more of whites disagree with some of the views you have just heard. For example, they reject the idea that Negroes are more likely than whites to have low morals. But for the moment, we're concentrating on attitudes opposed to racial integration. In Chicago, we talked with a group of whites who call themselves lower middle class. They are worried about Negroes moving into their neighborhood.
And they are not responsible citizens. Until they live like we are, we don't want them.
I don't want to live with me, to tell you the truth. Whether they take care of it or not, I don't live with them. Because they ran away from home. And if I wanted to live with them, I wouldn't be paying high taxes like I am. I would have stayed where I was.
More than half of whites in our survey believe Negroes are more likely than whites to run down their own neighborhoods.
In the South, they throw the garbage out of the window and the pigs come and eat it. Here they throw the garbage out of the window and no pigs come and eat it.
In general, are Negroes as civilized as whites? 43% of whites said no, Negroes are not as civilized.
It's his image that he's building. They act like stab.
Man. Look how far we've come. Look at how far we've come. This really does reveal a lot, and you can't blame these people, but it does show you how far we've come. Because this way of thinking is so much more uncommon. People tend to be a bit more refined in the way they think now. There's still flaws, but there's a degree of refinement in the way where people can understand it's not about race more than it is about class and culture. The crazy thing is, it's not even their fault. A lot of them are just, they've been given an impression of what black people are. The media that they were consuming created this impression of what black people are.
Just like animals. They kill each other, they rape and they run. There's a riot, well, they went and burned their own places. They had signs all over. Soul Brother, made no difference. They robbed, raped, plundered, looted their own people.
What about the way Negroes care for their children? About 1/4 of whites say that Negroes are less likely than whites to take good care of their children.
The colored woman does not take care of a child, does not help to educate this child. There's no problem about it. They're ADC. The more children they can have, the more money they get to go out and play the lottery. They get more money to go out and drink a little more gin. But to take care of their children, put a pair of shoes on them. I blame the mother for not educating her child when they're born, from the day they're born till the day they grow up.
Lower intelligence. 1 out of 4 whites also believe Negro children are more likely to hold back the class.
When you were in school, your mother made sure you did your homework before you went out. A colored child, the mother and father don't care if they ever do their homework.
And I feel that this is why the white child is so much more superior to the colored. And not because the colored child doesn't want to learn. It's because there's nobody behind him pushing him.
Lower intelligence. About 1 white in 7 agrees that Negroes have lower intelligence at birth than whites.
We're not all created equal. And as far as intelligence, there is a little book called Breeding Down, and it says in there where the colored is born with an IQ, not born, but it develops, to 80 plus, and the white is 90 and up.
About half of whites polled said they do not think most fellow whites want the Negro to have equality.
They don't desire an education of our type. They have different music. They have a different way of dressing. They have different schools or different churches. Their religion is different. Everything is different.
Sympathetic to the Negro, 38% of whites said they do not think other whites are sympathetic to the problems of the Negro.
I don't want to help them. I don't want to help them. And I don't want them living next door to me for the simple reason that there might be a lot of nice ones, but I got 4 kids, and I don't want them growing up with colored next door to them. Because it's a proven fact. They grow up, they think nothing of each other, they play together, pretty soon they're in their teens, they start dating, and pretty soon they're married. I don't want my kids marrying a colored person.
We have just heard the view.
Oh man. Like, bro, it's like these people are so disingenuous. So you mean to tell me if you found a black person or a black family or a group of black people who exhibited all those behaviors that you thought were appropriate, you still wouldn't want to be around them.
Of a small group of whites who feel under great pressure from Negroes economically and socially. Some of what they believe is also believed by the majority of whites in this country. Other views they hold are not shared by the majority. For example, the white majority does not believe Negroes have less innate intelligence than whites, or that Negroes have lower standards than whites when it comes to caring for their children and the ability of their children in school. We will hear more about these views of the white majority later in this broadcast. But it is significant that there is a minority, tens of millions of white Americans, who look at the Negro in an unfavorable way. In view of these attitudes, we asked in our survey whether whites think it would be a good idea to separate the races completely by setting up a separate country for Negroes made up of some of the states of the United States. Almost a quarter of whites said it would be a good idea. And how about a separate country for Negroes someplace away from the United States? 1/3 of whites said this would be a good idea.
Well, the good Lord made it that way when he created the earth. He had different races on different continents. He separated us by water, by great parcels of land. And now we're so smart, we've just confused the whole issue.
I am too smart. I am too smart. S-M-R-T. I mean S-M-A-R-R-T.
Many of whites who might...
As he sits in his home in America, where white people obviously originated from,
might be against a complete split between the races, nonetheless have no desire to see the Negroes come closer than they are now. For example, about half the whites said they would object to housing for Negro families in present all-white neighborhoods. And 4 out of 10 whites say they would object to busing Negro students to better schools. We found when it comes to ways for the Negro to protest for what he wants, most whites are against Negro picketing or boycotting. In fact, against anything other than holding a protest meeting. When Negroes riot in our ghetto...
Oh man, this is crazy. I have a lot more respect now for the black people who had to live through this, who had to deal with this. This is crazy. It's like you step on someone's shoe and then point out that it's dirty. You throw dirt at someone and call them dirty. It's crazy, man. It's like I have a lot more. It must have been so annoying to live back then, man. And I'm not trying to minimize it. It's obviously painful, but it must have been ridiculous to live back then. The amount of stress, I would just leave, bro. I'd rather go live in the woods, bro. This is crazy. I can't deal with stupidity, so I would just be out. I'm done. Dude, you guys are stupid. My respect level for anyone who had to live through this has gone up, because I don't think I could have. I would have left. I would have just, I'm out of here. This is too stupid for me. The absolute lack of critical thought is just crazy. It's crazy, man. And a lot of it, it's lack of critical thought, paranoia, panic, fear, just all sorts of nonsense. All of that coalescing into one giant blob of just, we hate you niggas.
And finally, about 1/3 of whites believes that the best solution to the race problem would be the establishment of a completely separate country for American Negroes. In summary, about 1/2 of whites indicate attitudes that oppose equality and integration. About 1/3 of whites go even further to express feelings of superiority and hostility to Negroes. The second group, according to dictionary definition, could be called racist. Who feels this way? It could be anybody in any part of the population, except that he is slightly more likely to be older or less well-educated or from the South.
Yeah, this was a fascinating video, very eye-opening. It's truly, it gives you a lot of perspective as to how people thought. Truly fascinating, very, very strange, very confusing. And we've come a long way. That's all. What it's shown is that we've come a very long way, because that opinion is not a common one at all now. Or people just aren't open about it and they still have these opinions and they're just not willing to say it because of the consequences of losing their jobs, their livelihood, and their place in society. So that might also be it too. But I'm going to go with we're just far past that. Anyways, that's the video. Let me know what you guys think. Make sure to like and subscribe. Comment your opinions below. I'll see you guys later. Peace.